Well, howdy, y'all. Welcome to Once Upon a Time in Texas with episode number 97. I'm your host, Michael Mitchell. A few random things. Got some cool stuff going on with City Council lately. Wichita Falls really growing. Kind of. Per the census, we're not. But it sure appears that we're growing, and we've had some great conversation lately about some opportunities and some things coming to town. And so pretty excited about our new city councilors and what our Chamber of Commerce is doing. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to go shut my pocket doors because I can hear the dang fish tank over there. There we go, and I am back. That was annoying. Sorry about that. So anyway, got some cool stuff coming to town. We're looking at some big data centers coming here to Wichita Falls. Learned a whole lot about electricity. I didn't realize that they ship an enormous amount of electricity up this way, and it's not used. And so they, it basically kind of turns around in the big circle through the lines, more or less. And about 40% of it just gets lost. And so there are huge parts of Texas that are kind of at their max capacity, I guess. It's the best way of putting it. And so, yeah, we've got these big data centers looking at coming to Wichita Falls. And so that sounds very promising. We've got our circle trail, the bicycle and hiking trail that goes around Wichita Falls. Looking at getting it completed pretty soon. And I don't know. I went to a meeting last night, a town hall meeting by one of our city councilors, faithful listener, Mr. Michael Battalino. And it's always good. They had Ron Kitchens, our Chamber of Commerce president, come up, and man, he talked about some other things going on that he didn't talk about at Rotary earlier that day. And, it's just, I don't know. I said it last night. I feel like now is really a cool time to be living not only in Texas, but right here in Wichita Falls. I think we've got some good leadership and some cool things happening. And there are even some people that go, well, I don't know that I agree with everything, but I don't know if there's a whole lot of stuff here lately that I've seen come across that I would go, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know. There's just cool things going on. City revitalization, we're plugging away on that. Some cool things are happening. We are hoping to have everything kind of set up and kumbaya'd, I guess, by City Council by the beginning of April. And so, I don't know. I feel like we're on the cusp of some really good stuff. I think in the next decade, you guys are really going to see some cool stuff coming out of Wichita Falls. In other news, tonight, it's Tuesday for me right now. You guys are going to get this podcast tomorrow. But I'm going to go to the Northwest Texas Council Boy Scouts of America House of Eagles dinner to, honor the young people that got Eagle Scout in 2024. My daughter Lorelai did not make it. She actually does her board review in a few days. So she didn't make it for the December border review date. So she's going to be a 2025 Eagle Scout. And interestingly enough, my other two, I think they're going to try to get their Eagle Scout done in 2025 as well. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, just, I don't know. Cool stuff going on. I've been out meeting with some realtors the last couple of days. Stopped and talked to one of the realtor shops here. And they said, hey, we're actually having our realtor get-together meeting for the month tomorrow. What are you doing? And I said, and he said, we'd love to have you come by at 9:30. And so I went and presented to them about Victory Home Loans and what I do and giving me a shot. And it was good. It was all very positive. So just I don't know, 2025, I don't want to predict, that it's going to be a great year, but I don't mind saying I think, it's going to be a good year for a lot of folks. So let's be optimistic. By God, it's January. Let's see and hear some good things happening. All right. So Davy Crocket is a historical hero. Hardly anybody living here in the United States doesn't know who Davy Crocket is. I've read a few books about him. He even did an autobiography that was written in the way he talked. Ugh. It was interesting, but gosh almighty, it was a hard read. But overall, he was just an interesting character, to say the least. But a lot of folks, I guess, don't really realize how he got to Texas. So, let's go through that. Before we jump into this, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, me and Victory Home Loans. I know there's tons of people moving to and in Texas and Oklahoma, where I am licensed to do mortgages. So if you know someone out there that's moving to Texas or Oklahoma, have them give me a shout. TheMichaelMitchell.com, THE, MichaelMitchell.com. Have them work with a broker like me. Make that process faster, cheaper, and easier. And work with somebody local and make that process fun and easy, and at least entertaining. I try to be entertaining every now and then. And as always, like I said, remember, when you work with me in Victory Home Loans, we sell dreams, not mortgages, because who the hell wants a mortgage? All right, so where did this week's idea come from? Well, it was the song. Y'all remember that Davy Crocket song? The Disney Davy Crocket, King of the Wild Frontier. Something like that. Anyway, I heard that song the other day, and I just kind of remembered singing along with it and watching that movie. And it wasn't John Wayne. Was it Fess Parker? Something. Anyway, it's an older Disney movie, and a couple of those famous people were in it. Anyway. But I also saw somebody that was wearing a shirt the other day that had the "You may all go to hell and I will go to Texas," which is a famous Davy Crocket quote. And he didn't say it exactly that way. There was more to it. But as always, we take out the part we like. We make it a quote and go with it. So Davy Crocket. Let's get into a little bit of history on him, which is going to include Texas. So Davy Crocket was a frontiersman, congressman, and defender of the Alamo. We all know that famous defender. There are many stories of him swinging his rifle, his old Kentucky long rifle, and taking out the terrible Mexicans and Santa Anna's army that were besieging the Alamo. And of course, he's a hero. He was the son of John and Rebecca Crocket, was born in Greene County, Tennessee on August 17th, 1786. In 1798, 2 years after the Crockets opened a tavern on the road from Knoxville, to Abington, Virginia, John Crocket hired his son out to Jacob Seiler to help drive a herd of cattle from Rockbridge County, Virginia. Seiler tried to detain David by force after the job was completed, but the boy escaped at night by walking 7 miles in 2 hours through knee-deep snow. Much like, no doubt, my parents had to walk through to get to school, so they say. He eventually made his way home in late 1798 or early 1799. Soon afterwards, he started school, but preferred playing hooky and ran away to escape his father's punishment. This strategic withdrawal, as Crocket called it, lasted 2.5 years while he worked as a wagoner and day laborer and at odd jobs to support himself. When he returned home in 1802, keep in mind he's 16 years old at this point. Yeah, 16. He had grown so much that his family didn't recognize him at first. When they finally did, he found that all was forgiven, of course. Crocket reciprocated their generosity by working about a year to discharge his father's debts, which totaled $76, a huge sum back then, and subsequently returned to school for a whopping 6 months. On October 21st, 1805, at the ripe old age of 19, Crockett took out a license to marry Margaret Elder of Dandridge, Tennessee. He was jilted by her, perhaps justly, since local legend intimated that he was a less than constant suitor. He recovered quickly from the experience, of course, courted a Mary Polly Finley, and married her on August 16th, 1806. Didn't take him long. In Jefferson County, they remained in the mountains of East Tennessee for just over 5 years. Sometime after September 11th, 1811, David, Polly, and their 2 sons, John Wesley and William, settled on the Mulberry Fork of Elk River in Lincoln County, Tennessee. They moved again in 1813 to the Rattlesnake Spring branch of Beans Creek in Franklin County, Tennessee, near what is now the Alabama border. Crockett named his homestead Kentuck. Sounds like a plan. I forgot to mention, I pulled all this from TSHA Online, the Texas State Historical Association. They've got an amazing bunch of stuff, so y'all go check it out. So that's where I'm pulling my information from today. So, next is the Battle of Tallushatchee. So he begins his military career in September of 1813 when he enlisted in the militia as a scout under Major Gibson in Winchester, Tennessee, to avenge an Indian attack on Fort Mims, Alabama. On November 3rd, under Andrew Jackson, Crockett participated in a retributive, that's a hard word, massacre of the Indian town of Tallushatchee, Tallushatchee. He returned home when his 90-day enlistment for the Creek Indian War expired on the day before Christmas, and re-enlisted on September 28, 1814, as a 3rd sergeant in Captain John Cohen's company. He arrived on November 7th, the day after Jackson took Pensacola, and spent his time trying to ferret out the British-trained Indians from the Florida swamps. After his discharge in 1815 as a 4th sergeant, Crockett arrived home and found himself again a father. His wife, Polly, unfortunately died in the spring of 1815 from unknown causes. So, next, Elizabeth and Rebecca Crockett. Elizabeth Patton Crockett, Davy Crockett's second wife. On May 21st, 1815, Crockett was elected. Sorry, that was the only note that it had really about Elizabeth. So, I goofed that. I'm going to take that out of my writing. On May 21st, 1815, Crockett was elected a lieutenant in the 32nd Militia Regiment of Franklin County. Before summer's end, he had married Elizabeth Patton, a widow with 2 children, George and Margaret Ann, and he explored Alabama in the fall with his eye toward settlement. He nearly died from malaria, bad problem back then, was reported dead, and astonished his family with his resurrection, much like Jesus Christ. Except Jesus didn't die in Alabama from malaria, happened a little differently. But yeah, he nearly died, was reported dead, and then he showed up to his family, who were all like, what? By about September of the next year, the Crocketts had moved to the territory soon to become Lawrence County, Tennessee, rather than Alabama. They settled at the head of Shoal Creek, and David continued his political and military career. He became a justice of the peace on November 17, 1817, a post he resigned in 1819. He became the town commissioner of Lawrenceburg before April 1st, 1818, and was elected colonel of the 57th Militia Regiment in the county that same year. So there you go. So then he starts some political career. New Year's Day, 1821, marks a turning point in Crockett's career. He resigns as the commissioner to run for a seat in the Tennessee legislature as the representative of Lawrence and Hickman counties. He won the August election and from the beginning took an active interest in public land policy regarding the West. After the session concluded, he moved his family to what is now Gibson County in West Tennessee. He was reelected in 1823 and then defeated by Dr. William E. Butler, but was in turn defeated in August 1825 in his first bid for a seat in Congress. In 1826, after returning to private business, Crockett nearly died when his boats carrying barrel staves were wrecked in the Mississippi River. When he was brought to Memphis, he was encouraged to run again for Congress by Major Marcus B. Winchester and won the election over General William Arnold and Colonel Adam Alexander to the United States House of Representatives in 1827. So he's run for a few things, he lost a few things, pissed him off, he goes into private industry, almost dies. They say, why don't you run for politics again? And he does and wins. He is reelected to a second term in 1829 and split with President Andrew Jackson and the Tennessee delegation on several issues, including land reform and the Indian Removal Bill. In his 1831 campaign for a third term, Crockett openly and vehemently attacked Jackson's policies and was defeated in a close election by William Fitzgerald. By this time, Crockett's reputation as a sharpshooter and a yarn spinner, if y'all don't know what a yarn spinner is, he was pretty good at telling tales, much like yours truly. But he was a sharpshooter, a hunter, and a yarn spinner, and it brought him into national prominence. He was the model for Nimrod Wildfire, the hero of James Kirk Paulding's play, The Lion of the West, which opened in New York City on April 25, 1831. Life and Adventures of Colonel David Crocket of West Tennessee was published in 1833 and reprinted the same year under a more accurate title of Sketches and Eccentricities of Colonel David Crocket of West Tennessee. Much of the same material spilled over into the first few issues of a series of comic almanacs published under Crockett's name from 1835 to 1856. That, as a whole, constituted a body of outrageous tall tales about the adventures of legendary Davy Crocket rather than the historical David Crocket. Kilt him a bear when he was only 3 kind of stuff. He was pretty good at telling big tales. And he did, and people loved it. Building in part upon his growing notoriety, Crockett defeated the incumbent Fitzgerald in 1833 to return to Congress, because why not? The following year, he published his autobiography, written with the help of Thomas Chilton. This is what I read, and it's tough. It's a tough read. It's called A Narrative of the Life of David Crocket of the State of Tennessee. The only work that he actually authored. And I've got to tell you, they wrote it like he spoke, and damn is it hard to read. But it's interesting. It was intended to correct the portrayal given by Matthew St. Clair Clark in the Sketches book, and to deny Crockett's authorship of that account, which did not bear Clark's name. The narrative was also a campaign biography of sorts, for Whig politicians were touting Crocket as an anti-Jackson candidate for the presidency of 1836. Crockett's narrative also represented a milestone in the evolution of rural America vernacular humor, which was unappreciated until much later. The self-deprecating, ironic, feigned naivety, and deflation of the proud and aristocratic would-be echoed loudly a generation later in the works of a guy named Mark Twain. So basically, Davy Crocket did this narrative kind of about the whole, aw shucks, yuckity, good old backwoods boy from Tennessee. And it was meant to make fun of and poke fun at the stuffy aristocrats. And it worked. And Mark Twain followed it. And in the following century, a guy named Irwin S. Cobb, Will Rogers, and many others to the present day. Thank you, Davy Crockett, because I think I'm kind of that guy, kind of the aw shucks, ironic, whatever. It is what it is. So Crockett apparently considered himself a serious candidate when, on April 25th, 1834, he began a 3-week tour of the eastern states. His campaign swing was recorded in the first of 2 Whig books published in 1835 under his name, an account of Colonel Crockett's tour to the north and down east, and a negative life of Martin Van Buren. In fact, he was likely only a convenient political tool to the Whigs, an independent frontiersman with a national reputation, perhaps the equal of Jackson's, who opposed Old Hickory on key political issues. I guess he was kind of like a historical Donald Trump. Not to get political, but Donald Trump does what Donald Trump does, right? Like, he just kind of, nobody tells him what to do. Nobody puts baby in a corner. And to be honest, Davy Crockett was kind of that way for Andrew Jackson, at least. So the point became academic, however, when Crockett lost his 1835 congressional campaign to Adam Huntsman, a peg-legged lawyer supported by Jackson and by Governor William Carroll of Tennessee, by 252 votes, which was quite a few back then. So at this point, he begins to get a little disenchanted with the political process and his former constituents. So Crockett decided to do what he had threatened to do and to explore Texas and move his family there if the prospects were pleasing. And I believe this is where he says, "You may all go to hell and I will go to Texas." On November 1st, 1835, with William Patton, Abner Bergen, and Lindsay Tinkle, he set out to the west, as he wrote on the eve of his departure, to explore the Texas well before I return. At this point, he had no intention of joining the fight for Texas independence. So there are a lot of theories out there, but the long and the short of it is, I believe he was coming to Texas because of land speculation. He wasn't a dumb guy. You read his book and you kind of go, holy crap, how did this guy ever even make it out of the house? He may not, he spoke pretty well, I guess. He didn't write very well. But, yeah, there was a lot of land speculation going on in Texas. Most folks that came here at that time were coming and they would do this little thing to where, like, they would get some land and then they would sell it to relatives. And then those relatives would sell it fairly quickly for more money. And then they would sell it to some other folks for more money. And then eventually people are going, oh my gosh, land is so expensive there. And then they would sell it back to the original land speculator. So everybody's kind of flush on their money, or even on their money. And then they start selling the land to all the people that are going, holy smokes, land is going for a lot of money. Kind of create your own little party there. So anyway, he decides to head to Texas. The foursome reached Memphis the first evening and, in company with some friends, congregated in the bar of the Union Hotel for a farewell drinking party where Crockett repeated an oft-heard refrain from his unsuccessful campaign that says, "Since you have chosen to elect a man with a timber toe," because remember he had a peg leg, "to succeed me, you may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas." That's where it all came from. Since you've chosen to elect a man with a timber toe to succeed me, you may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas. It was kind of a joke. But you know what? You see it on a t-shirt, and Texans just swell with pride. And a lot of us just go, you know what? You're right. You may all go to hell, and we will stay in Texas. Anyway, so they set off the next day, ferrying across the Mississippi River and riding overland to Little Rock, Arkansas. The group then traveled southwest to the Red River at the boundary with North Texas. Crossing the Red River, they passed through Clarksville, and by January 5th, 1836, they had reached Nacogdoches. At St. Augustine, the party evidently divided, and Bergen and Tinkle went home. Crockett and Patton signed the Oath of Allegiance, but only after Crockett insisted upon the insertion of the word Republican in the document. They thus swore their allegiance to the provincial government of Texas or any future Republican government that may be hereafter declared. Crockett balked at the possibility that he would be obliged to support some future government that might prove despotic. On January 9th, he wrote his last letter home, telling family and friends that I am rejoicing at my fate. So yeah, he signed the allegiance, no doubt, to get some land. So in early February, Crockett arrives at San Antonio de Bexar. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna arrives on February 23rd. On the one hand, Crockett was still fighting Jackson. The Americans in Texas were split into two political factions that divided roughly into those supporting a conservative Whig philosophy and those supporting the current administration. Crockett chose to join Colonel William B. Travis, who had deliberately disregarded Sam Houston's orders to withdraw from the Alamo, rather than support Houston, a Jackson sympathizer. What's more, he saw the future of an independent Texas as his future, and, as they say, Davy Crockett did love a good fight. So Crockett dies in the Battle of the Alamo on March 6, 1836, which most of y'all know. What one writer has dubbed a monstrous and unwieldy subcategory of Texana and Alamo writing, and others call the Crockett Death Wars. It emerged as a result of the publication of the Journal of Lieutenant Jose Enrique de la Peña. This eyewitness account declared that Crockett and 5 or 6 others were captured when Mexican troops overtook the Alamo at about 6 o'clock that morning. Santa Anna had ordered no prisoners be taken. Infuriated when some of his officers brought the Americans before him to try to intercede for their lives, he ordered them executed, and they were killed with bayonets and swords. De la Peña recounted that these unfortunates died without humiliating themselves before their torturers. A contentious and occasionally acrimonious controversy arose over whether De la Peña's diary was accurate, inaccurate, or even a 20th century forgery. I mean, seriously. Davy Crockett's one of the heroes of the Alamo, and De la Peña's writing in there that he was captured by Mexican soldiers and taken before Santa Anna and then just unceremoniously executed? Come on now. So of course we're going to have a little bit of argument about it. So the debate initiated with the insistence of some contestants on calling the narrative a diary, which De la Peña never claimed. Rather, he made it clear that he wrote a narrative compiled from a mixture of notes made at the time, later recollections, accounts given to him by others, and accounts in the Mexican press. De la Peña did not claim that he actually witnessed Crockett's death, and the passage dealing with it appears to reflect other statements that were plentiful at the press, or in the press at the time. Now, I mean, come on. Santa Anna's fighting for Texas. You think the Mexican press is maybe going to write a little bit of propaganda? You know, I don't know. Now, Susanna Dixon, the wife of Almiron Dixon, an officer at the Alamo, said Crockett died on the outside, one of the earliest to fall. Joe, which was Travis's slave and the only adult male Texan to survive the battle, reported seeing Crockett lying dead with slain Mexicans around him and stated that only one man surrendered and he was promptly shot. Yet within weeks of the fall of the Alamo, stories appeared in the Texan and outside press of Crockett and others being slain after surrendering. A fictionalized memoir by Richard Penn Smith, Colonel Crockett's Exploits and Adventures in Texas, written by himself, determined that Crockett was captured and executed. Legend, of course, would not stand for that, and soon thrilling tales arose of Davy Crocket clubbing Mexicans with his empty rifle and holding his section of the wall of the Alamo pretty much by himself until he was cut down by a slew of bullets and bayonets. One tale even allowed him to survive as a slave in a Mexican salt mine. And yes, that of course is the way that we mostly have heard Davy Crocket. He fired his weapon and then he swings his rifle around as a club, killing every Mexican within 5 or 6 feet, and is eventually slain and killed by a hail of gunfire and stabbed to death with bayonets. What a hero's death, right? That's the way most people remember it. And to be honest, who the hell knows? Frankly, it's impossible to tell. Not many people were there to witness it. And the Mexican army guys really weren't telling. So it is impossible to determine how Crockett died. Though he certainly could have been among those who tried to surrender. That's a possibility. It's not the hero's possibility that we all like to think. But he did clearly play a central role in the defense of the Alamo. Travis wrote that during the first bombardment, Crockett was everywhere in the Alamo, animating the men to do their duty. Other reports told of the deadly fire of his rifle that killed 5 Mexican gunners in succession, as they each attempted to fire a cannon bearing on the fort, and that he may have just missed Santa Anna, who thought himself out of range of the defenders' rifles. His presence at the low stockade in front of the Alamo Church, the most vulnerable point in the defensive line, was itself a testimony to Travis's trust and confidence in Crockett as a fighting man. In the final analysis, however, no matter how fascinating or outrageous the fabrications were gathered around him, the historical David Crocket proved a formidable hero in his own right and succeeded Daniel Boone as the rough-hewn representative of frontier independence and virtue. In this regard, the motto he adopted and made famous epitomized his spirit. Be always sure you're right, then go ahead. I like that. You know, you may all go to hell and I'll go to Texas. That's a pretty good one. But his other famous saying is, be always sure you're right, then go ahead. Interesting. Davy Crocket, folks. Whether he surrendered and tried to call a parley or something and was executed, or whether he really was swinging his rifle and killing everybody within a few feet. Don't know. But he's a hero, and he certainly was a shot in the arm to the defenders of the Alamo. So there you go. Davy Crocket, folks. What do y'all think? Let me know what other weird or off-the-wall interesting Texas history you'd like to hear about. I want to thank our sponsors again, me and Victory Home Loans. As always, if you know someone moving to or in Texas or Oklahoma, send them my way. TheMichaelMitchell.com, TheMichaelMitchell.com. And remember, I sell dreams, not mortgages. Thank you all for tuning in to Once Upon a Time in Texas. As always, remember, the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. Y'all have a great week.